Welcome back to Recap Reclaim. Today, we are going to break down 2006 brilliant heist thriller, Inside Man. Spoilers ahead. Watch carefully. The movie opens with Dalton Russell speaking directly into the camera, confidently admitting that he pulled off a perfectly executed bank robbery on Wall Street and walked out the front door without anyone realizing it. The only question is, how? We then see Dalton and his crew driving toward the Manhattan Trust Bank, disguised as painters. Dalton steps in first, disables the cameras, and within seconds, the entire bank is under their control. Doors sealed. Customers on the floor, and total silence. Outside, a police officer arrives after noticing smoke coming from the building. But before he can finish his emergency call, Dalton appears at the door and announces he has hostages, and if the cops get too close, people will die. That's all it takes. Within minutes, NYPD swarms the entire block, shuts everything down, and begins setting up for a full-scale hostage crisis. Meanwhile, the bank's owner, Arthur Case, hears the news and immediately panics. He calls a high-profile fixer, Madeline White, asking her to protect something extremely valuable hidden in one of the bank's safety deposit boxes. She warns him, if you lie about what's inside, our deal is off. Case doesn't lie, but he doesn't tell the whole truth either. He just wants one thing. Whatever is in that box must either stay hidden or vanish. Madeline agrees. On the police side of the story, we meet detectives Keith Frazier and Bill Mitchell. Part of NYPD's hostage negotiation unit, Frazier is sharp, experienced, and way too smart for the job he's stuck in, especially with an internal affairs case hanging over his head. They arrive at the scene and speak with Captain Darius, who tells them they have no clue how many robbers or hostages are inside. Yet Frazier tells him to establish control over the scene, and once he has real intel, then they'll talk. Until then, Frazier and Mitchell hit the diner across the street to observe. Inside the bank, Dalton and his team herd all hostages into the basement vault, separate employees from customers, and begin collecting everyone's cell phones and keys. One employee claims he left his phone at home. Dalton doesn't buy it. He dials the man's number. The phone rings in his office. Upstairs. Dalton drags him to the office and beats him brutally, returning covered in blood. A warning to everyone else. A terrified man immediately hands over his keys, and a frightened kid shows Dalton his handheld game console. Dalton calmly tells him to keep it. Then Dalton gives his next command. Everybody strips down to their underwear. Everyone complies, except one elderly lady, who is quietly escorted to another room by Dalton's female accomplice. The rest of the hostages are forced to wear identical jumpsuits and masks, ensuring no one can tell who's who. Later, another hostage, an older bank employee, begins suffering chest pains. He pleads that he has a heart condition. Dalton allows him to leave, but sends him out with a message. Tell the police to stay back, or they'll get 2 dead bodies next. Outside, the cops drag the man to the ground instantly. He repeats the warning. Back inside, the robbers check on the remaining hostages and walk past the vault and safety deposit boxes until they reach a small storage room. There, they begin preparing, digging into the floor, moving supplies, setting something up. Captain Darius briefs Frazier and Mitchell with what they've learned. A hostage says he counted for robber Steyer still securing the perimeter. Thayer pulling the bank's security. Footage. All calls from inside the bank are routed to the police. Now it's Frazier's move, but he doesn't call the robbers yet. He wants to see what their next step is. Mitchell locates the robber's van. It'll be dusted for prints, though he already knows the van's probably stolen. Finally, Frazier calls the bank. Dalton lets it ring. He doesn't answer. The police check the surveillance footage and see how the robbers managed to blind all the cameras, likely with infrared lights. Then suddenly, movement at the front door of the bank. At the same time, Madeline White visits the mayor of New York, asking for a huge favor. She explains she represents a client with sensitive interests inside the bank and demands full access to the police zone. The mayor refuses. She insists. He gives in. The robbers release another hostage, a Sikh man with a note attached to him, and just like expected, NYPD reacts horribly. They assume he's an Arab terrorist, insult him, and rip his turban off, completely disrespecting his religion. He angrily explains the difference, but of course, they don't care. The police drag the Sikh hostage away roughly, and later we see him sitting inside the diner, being questioned by Frazier and the rest of the team. He's furious, and rightly so, after being profiled and disrespected. It takes some patience, but eventually he calms down enough to explain what he saw inside the bank. He confirms the key info. There are 4 robbers, and roughly 20 to 30 hostages. A little later, the cops review the demands that came with the hostage. The robbers want 2 buses, 1 jumbo jetal, delivered by 9 p.m. If the deadline is missed, they'll execute 1 hostage every hour. On top of that, the robbers warn that the bank is rigged with plastic explosives. Captain Darius says there's no way they can get a plane, and the bus request sounds suspicious too. Frazier agrees, and adds that until Dalton speaks to him directly, he's not giving them anything, not even a cup of coffee. Just then, Arthur Case, the bank's owner, barges into the police van. Case nervously offers his assistance, and asks about the robbers' demands. When the cops tell him they want a jet, Case casually asks if they want him to arrange one. Everyone just stares at him. He's escorted out immediately. Soon afterward, the robbers demand food and opportunity. The cops can use to plant listening devices inside the building. A tech specialist suggests pizza. Since people naturally gather around food and start talking, Frazier notices a special small device she's carrying, and she explains that it's a digital recorder that stores up to 30 seconds of sound. Inside the bank, a macho hostage tries to act tough, so the robbers make an example out of him, dragging him across rooms full of terrified hostages and tossing him into the office supply room. The food delivery finally arrives. Frazier oversees the drop-off himself and tries making small talk with Dalton. He introduces himself, reminding Dalton that he'd love to chat, he just needs to pick up the phone. Dalton says absolutely nothing. Later, the cops listen to the audio from inside the bank and realize the voices are speaking in a foreign language. They assume it's Russian, so Frazier sends Mitchell to question the released hostages and see if anyone heard a Russian accent. Inside the bank, the robbers stage a confusing hostage shuffle, moving people between rooms. One female robber pretends to be a hostage, blending into the crowd, and then switches places with another hostage. The tactic keeps the cops guessing who the real criminals are. Meanwhile, the actual female robber continues digging the mysterious hole in the supply room. Back outside, a police officer with Russian roots listens to the recording and confirms it's not Russian. The closest match he can guess is Bulgarian or Central European-ish. Not very helpful. Frazier then gets an idea. He plays the recording over the squad car speakers, hoping someone in the crowd might recognize it, and it works. A construction worker steps forward, saying he knows the language because his ex-wife is Albanian, but cops then try contacting the Albanian consulate but get nowhere. So Frazier tells the construction worker to call his ex-wife directly. She arrives and immediately demands they erase her parking tickets in exchange for her help. Frazier reluctantly agrees. She listens to the recording and bursts out laughing. Not only does she know what the recording says, she knows exactly who is speaking. Before revealing it, she asks again about her parking tickets, just to be safe. When she finally gets the green light, she says, "That's the voice of Albania's former communist president, Enver Hoxha." Everyone is stunned. The robbers didn't record secret plans. They played an old propaganda speech in Albanian just to mislead the cops. Genius. The police quickly realized the truth. The foreign language recording wasn't a real conversation at all. It was just a random Albanian speech the robbers played because they knew the cops were going to bug them. This changes the entire game. Inside the bank, Dalton keeps appearing in scattered shots inside the vault, near stacks of money, making it unclear whether the crew is actually after cash or something much bigger. Soon, Dalton and one of his men open a specific safety deposit box. Inside the box, a stack of documents, diamonds, velvet bags, vintage jewelry. Case Dalton takes the document, clearly their main target, and seals everything back inside. Around the same time, the mayor arrives with Madeline White to meet Detective Frazier. She gives him a vague explanation for her presence, but Frazier refuses to trust her. So Madeline and the mayor use some subtle, old-school blackmail to force his cooperation. Eventually, Dalton answers the phone, but the call goes nowhere. He just repeats his demands, threatens to kill hostages, and hangs up. Another call later. Same story. Frazier thinks he's the one controlling the negotiation, not realizing Dalton is actually stalling on purpose. When Frazier offers more food, Dalton asks for sandwiches. Meanwhile, the crew finishes digging a perfect hole in the supply room, a key piece of the escape plan. After Frazier's second call, Madeline asks to talk to Dalton privately. Whatever she says convinces him to let her inside for a face-to-face meeting. Frazier escorts her to the bank, warning her not to try anything reckless. Madeline simply says, "I got where I am by making friends, not enemies." Inside, she's searched and then taken to Dalton. She offers him a deal, a short prison sentence plus $2 million. If he hands over the contents of the deposit box, Dalton laughs. He knows exactly who she works for, and he knows her client. Arthur Case was a Nazi collaborator during World War II. All he wants is for Madeline to see what he found. He shows her the incriminating documents in the box, and warns her he'll keep them as insurance in case anyone tries to take him down later. When Madeline leaves, she quietly tells Frazier she gave Dalton another offer, one he's considering. Frazier asks what she thinks of Dalton. She replies simply, "He's smart, and he's not a killer." Later, Frazier and the other detectives try to analyze Dalton's strategy. Frazier decides to stop playing by the rules. He calls Dalton and tells him, "We'll get you your jet, but I need to come in and check the hostages first." Shockingly, Dalton agrees. Frazier enters the bank and is led through the hostage rooms. Everyone is alive, scared, and wearing identical outfits. He sees the young boy with the handheld console, but Dalton refuses to release him. Before leaving, Frazier promises the hostages, "I'll get you all out." Frazier confronts Dalton, warning him that a tactical team is ready to storm the place. Dalton calls his bluff and outmaneuvers him again. At the door, Frazier tries tackling him and ripping off his mask, but another robber intervenes. Dalton demands the buses again. He then heads to the supply room and asks how long the plan will take. His partner says 2 to 3 hours. Back in the police van, Frazier tells Darius that Dalton isn't a killer. They need to wait. He tells them to aim the cameras at the windows. Seconds later, Dalton drags a hostage to the window and shoots him in the head on camera. The entire police team erupts. Frazier is instantly kicked off the case. Darius takes over and prepares to storm the bank, but Frazier notices something. The robbers planted a listening device inside the van. They've been hearing everything the cops say. He calls Darius to warn him, but Darius ignores it. Inside the bank, Dalton hears that the police are moving in. He tosses smoke grenades and forces all the hostages outside. The moment moment they spill out, the tactical team jumps in, throwing everyone to the ground and arresting every single person. The SWAT team sweeps the bank. Every room, every vent, the vault. The supply room. They find no robbers, no bodies, no stolen money. They also discover the guns were toy guns. Murder was staged and the hostage execution was fake. Dalton's crew was nowhere to be found. Every hostage and possibly every robber is taken to the station for questioning. No one can tell who's who. Later, the case is shut down. The police captain tells Frazier to drop it and casually reveals that his internal affairs problem is now taken care of. But Frazier doesn't let the case go. He finds a clue about the secret deposit box and meets with Madeline again. He plays her a recording of her blackmailing him with the mayor. In exchange for not leaking it. He demands information. She won't tell him directly, but gives him a hint. Madeline later visits Arthur Case and warns him. Dalton now has the wartime document and will use it as leverage if Case tries anything. Case admits something disgusting. Inside the box were diamonds, paperwork, and a Cartier ring belonging to a Jewish family he betrayed during the Holocaust. They trusted him. Let them die. A week later, Dalton finally reveals the genius of his plan. He never left the bank. He built a fake wall inside the supply room and hid behind it while the hostages were released one by one. Clean-shaven and dressed normally, he steps out of his hiding spot, takes the diamonds, the ring, and the document, and casually walks out the front door with the other customers. Outside, his entire crew waits for him. Frazier and Mitchell pull up at the same moment. Dalton walks right past Frazier, even bumps shoulders with him. Frazier doesn't recognize him. Only after Dalton leaves does Frazier open Arthur Case's deposit box with the court order. Inside he finds a piece of Goomba Cartier Ringa note that reads, "Follow the ring." Frazier confronts Case, who refuses to talk, but when Frazier holds up the ring, Case's face gives him all the confirmation he needs. Later, Frazier interrupts the mayor and Madeline at lunch, shows her the ring, and hands her the number for the U.S. War Crimes office. She promises to make the call. Frazier gives her the pen, holding their recorded conversation, successfully taking down a Nazi sympathizer, outsmarting a powerful fixer, and humiliating the mayor. He's officially promoted to first-grade detective. When he gets home, Frazier reaches into his pocket and finds something Dalton slipped into it during their shoulder bump. A diamond. Dalton's final message: "I'm smarter than you, but I respect you." If you enjoyed this recap, make sure to subscribe, hit the like button, and turn on notifications for more awesome videos. Thanks for watching.